Yo, Perry Shore from some retrogrades. Happy Friday. Today we're talking about 7 ways that Andrew Tate make men weak. And this is the exact opposite of what you're being told. So what's going on? Why are you being told the exact opposite about Andrew Tate? And why are you being told it by conservatives and mainstream media who supposedly hate this dude? With me are my main men, Will Nolan, Elliot Holst. It's another episode of C-Mask, so buckle up, everyone. We're going to jump right into it. Will and Elliot, how are you gents on this fine Friday morning? I hope well.
Doing well, Tim. Glad to be here. Important topic.
Yep, all is well. Tired of talking about Andrew Tate, but I'm so self-centered that I don't want to talk about anybody but me, so it doesn't matter.
Can we address that elephant in the room real quick, what you just said, Elliot? I'm tired of talking about this guy too. I'm sincerely, honestly, in all candor, sick of it. And it's just, today's show is premised largely around a great article written by our buddy who can't be here today, Dr. Mike Robillard, which is called In Tate We Trust. And we're basically drawing the 7 ways that Andrew Tate makes men weak from Mike's article. So it's like we have a little fourth box and Mike's there with us too. But the reason that I think it's hard, this is Will's point, you have to address him, and it's hard not to address him. It's ineffectual not to. Is that Will, I'll go to you first off. This is kind of the thesis statement. He strengthens the matrix, from which we ought to be repelled, while feigning resistance to it. Am I right?
Yeah, I love this point in Mike's article. We've raised it on C-Mask before, which is that Tate is a containment mechanism, because you've got all these disaffected, borderline angry, in many cases, young men frustrated by society, feeling like masculinity's toxic now and there's no place for them. And then you've got this guy who comes along like the Pied Piper who says, follow me. And he gives them a taste of the truth, because he says things like, don't complain, go to the gym, take care of your brothers, and respect your mother. Some of the basic natural law stuff that is truly important for men and that they might not be getting elsewhere. But where is the Pied Piper really leading them? And that's when you start to dig deeper and see, oh, right, okay, we're all off to the promised land of promiscuity and glorifying money above all else. And he's admitted that he talked dirty to men for money as part of his webcam business. So is that really masculinity? Is it really helping men? No. But on the surface of it, it sure seems like it. Most guys would rather listen to a 6'2" guy who has done well for himself financially and is in shape than some fat loser of a man telling them to be more sensitive. And that's how the trick works.
Yeah, and you said it a second ago, that he is a pimp, right? He'll dirty talk to men. So I think this is also your point, Will, but I wanted to get your perspective on it, Elliot. It's essentially Kardashian funny business. It's foolishness. The idea of get paid, get laid, the more you earn, the more you can burn. There's a minimum correlation here. Guys have to be wealthy enough. Will and I say this all the time in return matchmaking, to raise a family, which is the real measure of a man. You got to be a patriarch. You should be aiming to be a patriarch if you're not going to go be a priest. But that doesn't hold. Like at the top, there's a vertical asymptote very low here. It doesn't make you more of a man to just sell your soul and pimp out your values in order to make more, like linearly. You don't become linearly more of a man. It's not Vito Corleone here. Like, I don't care what a man does as long as he makes money. That's not how it works. How do you respond to that, Elliot? The presupposition that these people have when they defend Tate on this basis?
Well, I have to step back and say that there's much that I appreciate. I'm going to put it like this as an analogy. So we had the pandemic in 2020, and nobody liked the pandemic. It made everybody's life uncomfortable, but at the same time, a ton of people woke up and changed their lives as a result. So it's like, here comes this thing that is massively popular, meaning like everybody's on board with it. There are those who are running full speed to put the mask on and take the jabs and to listen to everything that, the CDC says. But then at the same time, there are those that were already privy who are like, okay, I see where this is going. This is a hoax. And so you got that split. But then you have the people in between. And these are the people that I love. I mean, since the pandemic, we've seen these people just emerge. I mean, a lot of them have big mouths now and they're on YouTube in a good way. And they're like, I was asleep. The pandemic woke me up. And now I'm leading people to the truth. And I can't help but to see, I tend to lump Trump and Tate in the same category in that way. In that, like, they were an alarm clock. He's an alarm clock, a loud clanging that you can't not notice. And so you wake up, you take a look, you can't not see Tate, you can't not see Trump. And as a result, you're live into something. You might move in the direction of it, but just like those who were awakened by the pandemic, you quickly see, okay, there's a half truth here. There's something that I needed to see. I'm grateful that I saw it. Thank you for waking me up. But this is short-sighted. There's a lot more to it. And I'm going to go look for what that is. And I'm noticing, and I'm sure you're noticing, we were just having this conversation about your matchmaking program, that there are a lot of people, I see them there in my program, who were awoken by the rants of Tate, but then quickly, get on that road and turned around and were like, okay, I'm on the road. I'm happy I'm on the road. I'm not going to walk off the cliff. I saw that there's actually a branch here. And then they end up coming to guys like you and guys like me. I'm grateful for that. I don't want to, it almost sounds like, I'm taking leftovers, right? Because he's 10 times more popular than we are. But in the same way, it's like, he was able to blow that pipe, which woke some people up, but ultimately, where did they turn? Well, it allowed them to move to the truth. There are more people returning to the faith. There are more, I think, as crazy as it may sound, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't have the statistics, it's just my sense that as a result of Tate's clanging, there are more men that are considering marriage. Why? Because they realize, intersexual dynamics is where we messed up. I can put on the likes of an attitude similar to Tate, but for what? To procreate, to find a wife. And so I don't know. My tendency is to look at the good that's come about as a result.
I have the same tendency. I think we've how many shows have we done on Tate here on CMask? This
might be the second or third.
Yeah, like I totally agree. There's no but. By emphasis, however, I think that it's easy to get spun off there as if I'm pointing at this camera, or you or myself are Johnny-come-latelys to Christian masculinism. And like, none of us are. All of us are Christian dudes that have been in our own orbit preaching masculinism for some time. I mean, like, and I'm not trying to complain, because I'm not. I wouldn't want to violate Tate's rule, right? But like, I took a bunch of shrapnel, proverbially speaking, not just in my backside, but in my front side, more for, not so much for my book, Case for Patriarchy, but over this one, Steph's book. I mean, this was ugly. And so when we announced that we're doing this, pro-patriarchy, anti-feminism thing, I really announced it on Matt Fradd's show 4 years back, this month, actually. And starting then, Christians they'd heard of the red pill, some of the guys, but they hadn't heard that it was not only contextualizable in Christian space, but that it's only properly contextualizable in Christian space. And they're like, we're all ears. And that's cool. And that's what I've been working on ever since, along with a couple simultaneous projects. And that's what you guys have been working on. That's why we teamed up, among some other reasons. But I don't want to sound, I guess I'm just responding to, I don't want to sound like we're taking his breadcrumbs, because I've been doing this since before he was already popular, but it's blown up into like, he's the most Googled man in the Milky Way galaxy, right, over the last 9 to 12 months, maybe 15 months. And we're not just coming along lately. He's just more popular, and he's much more popular because it's much easier to sell the truths. The mob's fickle. Well, before we get into the 7 reasons, this is most important. And I wanted to say this about the Kardashian thing. The mob is fickle as hell. Mm-hmm. They want the truth. And it's like, speak plainly to the common man. They're naturally high on the truth. Yeah, in the Tate way, in the 60%, 70% truth way. Then they want to be narcotized. They want 30 or 40% opium. And that's what Tate is tainting the water with, is the 30 to 40% that's like, you do not need to be temperate. You do not need to be Christian. You do not need to do the hard aspects of manhood. You know, being single is really more manly than being a married guy. And that appeals to all the basest aspects of the hoi polloi. What do you say?
On that note, one of the things that tells me that Jesus was the real deal is that at the height of his popularity, we're told he was followed by multitudes. And then what does he do? He tells them some stuff they don't want to hear. And then they all walk away. And then he's left with just this hardcore of people who are actually willing to live up to his demands. And even some of the disciples can't do it because he doesn't pander to the mob, and he doesn't give them the sweet talk that would just give him the maximum amount of followers. And there's something in the way that Tate glorifies in his own popularity and mass appeal that should sound hollow to people who are thinking about it carefully enough, because we've got that little element of truth, which everyone wants to hear, because that's what we're made for. But because we're fallen, what we really need is purging and chastising. And that's the bit that he doesn't do. And he gives free rein to some of the baser appetites, as we've mentioned in previous episodes. And that's where the danger is, because yeah, it's true for sure. Elliot's right. There are some guys listening to this who are going to get red-pilled on some aspects of feminism, and yet they're going to get entrenched, as Mike's article was saying, in some of the more dangerous aspects of feminism, like unmarried sex, for example. And that's the way that you can really control men and get them by the balls.
So he did this tweet. Genghis Khan had endless women and 200 children as a reward for conquest. I am the most searched man on the planet. This is the self-celebration you're just mentioning, Will. I have conquered Earth. Delusion, right? A little bit of fleeting ephemeral fame. And listen to the delusion. I am the highest status male on the planet. What's your metric? Females do not expect loyalty from me. This is another one of the fallacies we address in the 7. This is almost all 7 here. They only expect that of lesser men. So the denigration of, let's just jump into the 7 list, right? The 7 ways that Tate makes not just men weak, but in particularly Western men weak. And folks out there, parish orphans, retrogrades, if you didn't think men could be made any weaker, wait until you see what the Tate phenomenon will do to the Western man. I'll make the case for you in a second. Even though he's partly red pilling him, it's a net negative. We're going to get into that in a second. I just want to remind people to like this video, subscribe to the channel. We need you to subscribe to the channel and not just watch and like the video, please. Also, if you're interested in what we're saying here today, me and Will run return matchmaking. That's www.retrogrn.us, where we really need young men. Everyone online, smack talkers, were saying that this was going to fail. There weren't going to be enough women. It would be a sausage fest. We've had the exact opposite. We have so many hyper eligible 25, 28, 31-year-old women who are, a lot of them virgins and otherwise low body count, and just not quite enough men to make a one-to-one match at this point. So we need men. www.retrogrn.us. Also, go to realestateforlife.org and move from a blue state to a red state. I suggest the American South, the blood red swath of states from Texas to Florida, www.realestateforlife.org. Okay, so the 7 ways that Tate makes Western men weak. Number one, he cultivates intemperance. Can anyone argue against this? Like, we're talking about Candace Owens, Tucker, Bet David. They all have interviewed this guy, and they're all like, look, I want to pick his brain. Cool. That's awesome, because he's offering much truth. But way number one, that he's weakening the West. He cultivates intemperance. Can anyone tag this bet? What do you say, Will?
Someone would probably say he is encouraging guys to take care of their diet, or maybe not drink too much alcohol so they don't get fat. He talks about being in good physical shape. And there's an element of temperance to that, because it's about food and it's about drink. But more importantly, we see the intemperance when it comes to sex. It's about lust and what you are ruled by. Is it reason that guides your actions? You walk in the path of virtue to heaven ultimately? Or are you descending more into your carnal or bestial nature? And that's the danger that so many guys who listen to him run into. And it's no coincidence that he converted to Islam, allegedly, because Aquinas points out that that religion seduces with the prospect of carnal promises. So it's where you'd expect a guy like that to end up. And which one's worse for society, really? Having a few too many burgers or not being able to control yourself sexually? Well, we know that the feminists wanted to promote promiscuity to undermine the family, and that's the way you can control most guys. And he's still being controlled like that.
What do you say, Elliot?
You know, I'm going to say that he sets a standard that for most men is unattainable, but I think in a way is also worth trying to achieve, right? So if I'm going to promote promiscuity, and I'm going to promote, this harlotry, having, what do they call it? Like when you have a harem, having a harem of women. Well, you don't just promote that and then guys go and do it. Sure, guys go do that. And you guys, the two of you I'm talking about in particular, with your dating program, like you're starting to see that. Like, these guys are not high value men. I mean, you're talking about dudes that are, wealthy and that are tall and maybe decent looking, but cannot absolutely make themselves attractive to a single freaking woman. And so I think, when you dangle a carrot or a treat out in front of somebody, and there is a, between that treat, themselves and that treat, that thing, that sweet thing, that sinful thing, that thing that I want, there's a trench between the two of you, right? There's an obstacle between the two of you. It'll force you to be resourceful. So now guys maybe who were like swearing off women, or they weren't aware of intersexual dynamics, or just needed some motivation to get going and to consider that maybe it's worthwhile being a high value man, maybe they'll get their shit together. Like, we're talking about the intemperance. I like the fact that he's telling guys to go work out and get in shape and to, cut back on the alcohol and be a guy that is virtuous halfway there. We know that. And I'm kind of playing devil's advocate, but like halfway virtuous, get your shit together. And then maybe you would be a viable option for, the girls that the good girls, the girls that you guys are bringing around, but, to women in general. I don't know. That's my piece.
Look, I ain't trying to make you criticize him more than you believe is accurate, Elliot, but what about Will's point that, okay, for this is quite catechetical. In Aristotle, book 4 of the Nicomachean Ethics, what is temperance? Like, what are any virtues? They're individual excellences. You can't get them all at once. They're like muscle groups. You have to work them out one at a time, because then they couldn't, if there's one super virtue, the way Plato thought, then they couldn't be predicated across all the categories. So you got to get these individual virtues, excellences, one at a time. Temperance is habituating the golden mean between two vices, vice of excess, vice of deficiency, on appetites of taste and touch. So there's no doubt that him being physically fit. Looked in the Candace Owens interview like he'd grown a little bit of a belly, but he's physically fit. So that's taste. But Will's point is, I'd say, impossible to deny that on the average, for the ens commune, or for the political community of the common good, regulating our temperance with regard to touch, meaning you can't have men running around having families with 10 different women like Genghis Khan. That's 50 times more important than men not being fat. I mean, society needs families. It's the building block.
Let me ask you, what percentage of guys, even in your small experience, but if you could just extrapolate that, like, can even do that if they wanted to?
I don't know. I don't see. I think this is when I was talking to Pearl on Pearly Things, who's probably defends Tate more than you are. She asked a question like that too. Like, and to me, it's a. I'd say the guys that are decent looking and confident, the 1 in 4 could do it enough to wreck society. But it's a middle schoolish question. It's like asking if you could, whether or not asking if you should. It's really not hard, as all three of us know. Sometimes we wish all the men in our matchmaking program knew it. It's not hard. If you can fake confidence and you know how to project it, it's not hard to get with women. And every dude thought it was hard in middle school, and just, I don't know, 3/4 of men never figure it out, and they always struggle with women. And that's kind of sad, because they end up electing a woman that they don't think is the queen of all the women. They just take the most recent one and they settle for her. But the reason I think temperance is so important is because it's really not hard for men who are well-formed, at least in the realm of confidence, to convince lots of young women, not just their wife, that they're the real deal. Yeah. And so, I would say about 1 in 4 could run around getting different women in area codes. I'm saying it's not good to do. And if 1 in 4 men did it, it would ruin society. It would bring down society and destroy the family.
Let me go a little bit further, right? And of course, I'm doing that. I'm playing devil's advocate. Makes it fun.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Because I've seen this, and I've seen how it worked out even for certain high value men, where they're under this assumption that they could have multiple women. Most guys, even if they're a high value man, can't even handle one woman, but they go and they think it's a good idea because it's being promoted and Tate promotes it. And so they go, and I'm going to have 4 girlfriends now. I'm going to plate spin. I'm going to tell them, and I'm going to keep it honest. I'm going to let them know. If we boil that, we take that statistic, so 1 out of 4 can get maybe 4 or 5 women at the same time for, I don't know, 60, 90 days. My point is that, like, at some point, this shit's going to hit the fan, and they're going to realize, I can't, it's to handle all these women, I got to be a legit pimp. And we know Tate's a pimp. Like, he teaches you how to pimp. You have to have your bottom bitch. And you got to know how to pimp management. That's what he calls it, pimp management. You got to know how to be a legit pimp. That requires being a legit psychopath. Yeah. Not most guys who are like just, normal, generally good, maybe sinful, but, guys are just, they're dudes. They're not pimps. They're not trying to be pimps. They're not psychopaths. I think even if they do take that bait and try to chase it for a moment, at some point, and we see it, I see it, they're like, I spent the last 5 years, being a man whore, and I did the Tate thing. But then eventually it's like, my health is declining. I'm running out of money, and my mental sanity is in the dumps, because now I got to deal with not just one crazy woman. I got 4 of them blowing up my phone. It's unsustainable.
And it starts off wrong anyway. It's not just that it ends up wrong, although obviously it does. It starts off with fornication, with contraception, and it's anti-family right from the beginning. And you're in a state of mortal sin too. So your mind gets darkened, your will gets weaker, and then things snowball in a bad direction from there. So I don't think it even takes a long time for the bad things to come in. I think they're right at the start.
And then repentance.
Yeah, hopefully. And for any guys listening who are in that situation, you can repent, but you need to actually get yourself to confession and do it. You can't just stay at home and feel sorry for yourself.
Right.
Yeah, the problem is on a social, if we aggregate all of the men who are leading all of their families astray in variant ways, the effects of sin, the effects of concupiscence, the Catechism affirms, remain after reconciliation confession. So yeah, a married man can go try to be a pimp or whatever, and just the ultimate LARP. It's pathetic, and it is psychotic, like you said, Elliot. He can try to do that, and then he can go back and he can get square with God, but he'll have ruined his family, his society in miniature. And if you have a quarter of the men doing that or whatever, not that they're all going to do this, like you said, but if you have a quarter of them thinking in that mode of thought, then even thinking this way as a married man or a previously to marriage man can be enough to bring down all of society. I don't know. So I'm just saying temperance is really important. And to be a temperate man on Aristotelian terms, you have to have the regulation of both touch and taste. It's not just lifting weights. You guys all agree. I don't know. Robillard wrote this: Tate's sudden and meteoric rise isn't hard to explain. I love this point. Given the false choice between soy boys and bad boys, most men and women alike, if they're being truly honest, will choose the bad boy every time. It's more attractive, not just physically. It's little surprise that the politically incorrect, ethnically ambiguous kickboxing pimp fares better than the increasingly docile, neutered, and hyper-feminized new male of the industrialized West at catching the attention of the young, sexually frustrated, disenfranchised white males who are perpetually bombarded with media messaging to the effect that the very existence is inherently toxic. And I think what Mike goes on to say is, so half-temperance, Aristotle calls this the similitudes. Half-temperance is the coolest thing in their eyes. Half-temperance in the eyes of the hoi polloi to this frustrated demographic is more cool than temperance. And that embracing of the similitude of so many of the virtues, the half version of it, I think is the most toxic thing about Tate. That's why I had it as item number one. Now I'll let each of you guys respond to that, and then we'll go on to number two.
Yeah, it's the question of what true strength really involves as well, because I haven't seen any videos of Tate lifting, but it looks like he does a few push-ups or something. He'd probably be reasonably in shape and kind of strong, and people would think that's impressive. But like with the story of Samson in the Bible, you can be as strong as you like physically. He was the strongest man to ever live, but St. Ambrose, I think it is, comments that he wasn't strong enough to control his own lust with Delilah, and that was enough to get him. Didn't matter that he had the physical strength. So that's why I'm saying that of the two kinds of temperance, with touch and taste, and we know Aquinas says that it's sex that is uniquely affected by original sin. That's the one men are going to be most careful about. And it's why it was so smart of the feminists to say, how do we beat patriarchy? Well, we undermine monogamy. How do we do that? We push promiscuity. We get men where they're weakest. So if you're going to talk to me about temperance, that's where I want to see it. Are you truly strong? That's where you have to show it. So no chastity without masculinity.
Yeah. We're talking, you say half temperance, but, from an inside out point, it's shallow. It's a hollow temperance. It's really, I think, a better way of looking at it, because they're not equal, right? The eating temperance, right? And now we're talking about the sexual temperance. The sexual temperance is at the core. It's the root. And so you're showing, you're showing the shell, but on the inside, completely hollow, empty, maybe even rotting.
Yep.
I love that. And I love the devil's advocacy, actually. It helps people to test out, how do I feel about Andrew Tate? It's like one of the most 5 talked about things on conservative Twitter now. So I'm glad for some pushback and then real dialogue. Pope Francis would like that. Secondly, it's kind of been suggested by item number 1. Andrew Tate makes men weak in the West because he confounds common men with the false similitudes of male virtue. And here I'm expanding out. I'm not just talking about temperance. I'm talking about honesty, amicability. I could go on and show you how there's a false. So let's just start with honesty. He's like, look, you got to be direct. You got to be direct. This is what men are. I'm presenting what true men are. I'm like the platonic form of a man. No, for the reasons that Will just enumerated with prudence, that's actually not true. It's less strong and it's less virile to be a cream puff who can't regulate both touch and taste. We all agree some fat squeaky guy that can't not eat for 2 hours, that's weak, that's soft. He's the Pillsbury Doughboy. He cannot regulate that appetite. Well, he also can't regulate the appetite for sex. And like Will said, that's much more society generating. It's much more central to society. So he's not direct. He's not presenting a true iteration, a true well-ordered iteration of manhood. And the kind of honesty that he's offering, look, because that's what you do when you're saying that you're the red pill, the antidote to the matrix, which is the backdrop for all this. I'm giving you a true conception of what life among men and women, human beings should be. It's not true. It's ultimately not the red pill unless you're seeing the world as it really is, right? So it's false directness. It's false bravado, being like, I'm going to say things rudely and tell you that all the world is really just about like pimp and hose. Well, that's wrong ultimately. So to the extent that we laud him for honesty, it's only a similitude of honesty or directness. What do you say, Will?
Yeah, that's true. And you can't have the virtue of truthfulness without prudence, because let's say a guy says something like, you know what, bro, I just say the truth the whole time. All right, great. So why don't you go and publicly advertise all your true sins, all the bad things about yourself? Do that the whole time. Or why don't you constantly harp on about your true perfections? The problem is it's not prudent to do that. So you don't really have the virtue of truthfulness. And the same way with this idea that it's always facts over feelings. Well, then you're going to run into problems with the virtue of affability, which is the fact that we're social animals and we have to get along with each other. And you've got the excess of being a flatterer, which isn't a good thing, but you've got the defect of surliness as well. And that's what I see really as one of the serious problems with people taking Tate as a model, is that they become too abrasive with their speech. It's all about the hard facts, bro. But the problem is, the fact really is that feelings matter, and you have to take those into consideration. And true strength can mean holding your tongue, knowing when not to hit people over the head with the hard truth. I struggle with that temperamentally, so I know it from the inside. And the kind of guys you two are as well, we're all going to run into that, because part of being masculine, forthright, direct, etc., you've always got that quip. You've always got that thing on the tip of your tongue that you could say to crush someone in an argument or end it quickly. Or I can go to a dinner party and just start speaking if I'm not careful, and then everyone's going to want to leave in a couple of seconds because of the sort of things I might bring up. And I guess you two are probably similar. That's not actually masculine to do that. And Tate encourages that kind of behavior.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's imbalanced, and it reminds me of like prosperity gospel and like law of attraction, where it's like, I'm going to show you all the good. I'm going to tell you all the good. You can have Christ without the cross, is essentially what he's saying in these half truths. And it's like, yes, you can have all of this, all the good, absolutely everything that you want is going to tickle you and you're going to be sensually gratifying, and life is going to be great, and you can do this. But absolutely no mention, this is like the authority without the responsibility thing, no mention of the full truth, which is the requirement for responsibility and true mission as a man. Like, to get to the full truth, we go back to the original question, like, what is the end of man? Is the end of man to be sensually gratified and to be chasing all this, pleasure and prosperity gospel, and everything is feel good, or is the end of man, or the complete end of man, to offer that all up to the Lord, for it to be bigger than us, the focus of the center of gravity being outside of the base of support, something bigger and grander and greater, giving ourselves over as Christ did on the cross.
Yeah. And that point about the metric Tim mentioned at the start, not only will having piled up lots of money by being a webcam pimp not help you, it will actually hurt you when it comes to your judgment. And having lots of different women as well, that's going to hurt you too. So you've got this worldly metric of success about what a man apparently is, and you're actually emasculating yourself and doing yourself damage the more and more you pursue it, because we're told that this life is all about knowing God, serving him, loving him, so we can be happy with him in the next life. And the further someone pursues the Tate route, the further really they're taking themselves away from that. So it's just shooting themselves in the foot eventually.
Yeah, on the score of the similitudes, Mike's article, which is up on AmericanMind.org, by the way, it's been up there for about 36 hours. He writes the following: we can easily recognize some of Tate's prescriptions as healthy, refreshing, highly necessary. Among them, the injunctions not to be physically or mentally weak, to take personal responsibility, to assert oneself. That's a really important one. To reject both feminism and feminization, and to honor God. We'll get to that one next. But there's no separating these prescriptions from the net message of Tate's overall brand. The upshot of that message includes advocacy for such things as being an actual pimp, engaging in fraud, sleeping around, repatriating to Romania or Dubai, amassing harem, sports cars, and other markers of conspicuous consumption, converting to Islam, and teaching tens of thousands of men online to do the same. Taken in the aggregate, Tate's instructions for fighting the matrix are really ways to increase its power. Elliot, what do you say here?
That's interesting. Yeah. So where he's leading, I was just stuck on Islam. And, I can't help but think with my conspiracy theorist mind sometimes. And so we're talking Tate, I'm thinking agent of the oligarchs. I mean, maybe he's an agent of the communist, and the promotion of the masculine form of feminism, with all of its good and none of its bad, rots Western society. We're talking about that. But then, we can't help but to think about the physical infiltration of the West. Here in America, it's, mostly from the southern border. But all of Europe is practically becoming, it's like, I learned about Lepanto, right? And how we staved off Western civilization from being a Muslim civilization. Well, this war, as we know, is a bit more subtle, and it has a lot to do with, open borders. Tate now shows up, and he's promoting the essential rot, feminism, and then supporting the infiltration by creating sleeper cells amongst impressionable young Western men to become terrorists within our own lands. Because what's going to happen when we're already what's the word, like it's fractured, balkanized. We're balkanized here in America. I mean, your neighbor could be a Biden Trump liberal, and they'll literally hate you. To balkanize us even further, when ish hits the fan, and you have to decide whether or not your allegiance as an English man, a white English man with a Catholic heritage that has been fractured, now owes his allegiance to Allahu Akbar. Thanks, Tate. Now I don't even know who I trust. This was a normal white kid from London, and now I got to battle with whether or not he's going to strap a bomb to his chest and blow up me and my family, because you just recruited him for the enemy.
I like it. I like it. This is item number 3. He is, to the extent that he's an attractive figure, the most Googled man on earth the last couple of months, he is populating the West with Islam. He is an evangelizer for Western Islam. This, which purely, I mean, this one we don't have to, number 3, we don't have to explain too much. I think, Elliot, you gave a beautiful account of it right now. It's a horrifying prospect. To whatever extent Christianity has been on the wane in the West, and Islam's been on the wax in the East, and it's encroaching into the West. Well, now you have the most popular Western man on the internet spreading it like a not so sleeping sleeper cell in the West. This is the last thing we need, right? Like saying that Christianity is effeminate and Islam is masculine. I mean, this is the perfect nexus to between points number 2 and 3. Point number 2, we're saying all these things he says are similitudes of virtue, not true virtue. Point number 3 is that he's a prophet of Islam, or he would be if he could be, and he's spreading it. And Islam is a kind of fugazi version of monotheistic masculinism, and Christianity is an unappreciated gem, the one true path to learning about the one true man, the best man ever, who was God. So it has to be masculinism. I mean, that's the central heart of this project. And so you have there you have it. It's the similitude of monotheistic masculinism is Islam, the similitude of monotheistic Christianity, except all the while Tate explicitly, I had a clip, but I'm missing it today. He explicitly says Christianity is effeminate and Islam is not. What do you say, Will?
Yeah, this reminds me of a remark that E. Michael Jones makes in one of his books on Islam, and he quotes Luther, who called Islam the scourge of God. And EMJ comments, the arrival of Islam on the scene is the sign that God has run out of patience with lukewarm Christians who do nothing to preserve the social and moral order from soul-destroying decadence. And he argues that throughout history, God has always used Islam, which shares some truths with Christianity, as a tool to purge soft, degenerate Christian society of its errors and get it back on track. And who knows, maybe that's what's going to happen in the future. It's happened many, many times in the past. So if that's any guide, then we should expect it.
Historically speaking, I think Islam qua Christianity is very interesting, because before the Great Schism, before Church West, the Latin Church, and Church East, the Greek Church, formally split in 1054. I think Tate was in Orthodox before he converted. But before that, for 1,000 years, we coexisted as the Western lung of the church, that's us, the Roman Catholics, and the Eastern lung of the church, the Greek Catholics. And the Western church in Italy there was always on set with encroachers who would become infiltrators. We're talking the Visigoths, the Huns, the Vandals, the Vikings, the barbarian hordes, right? The Angles, the Saxons. They all came in and they're like, we'll be Christians, but we want to be some iteration of fake heretical Arianist type Christian. And so the church in the West was always doing like this juggling and shit to keep all these balls in the air and to try to put butts in the seat. That's always been a problem Rome has struggled with. It's not only post-conciliar church. And the church in the East through those, 4th, 5th, and 6th centuries was just like, we're chill. We're Constantinople. We're over here. We're not getting infiltrated because we're not on the heart of Europe the way Italy is. And we don't have to accommodate. We don't have to bend our doctrine or our discipline. It was the 7th century, the emergence of Islam out of the Arabian deserts, that for the first time, it actually hit the Eastern church first and forced it to, put a better to its money. The Christian better had to say, what are you going to stick with, your doctrine? Or are you going to try to accommodate these other people? Mainly Islam was just militaristic. But Mike smartly comments on this, the Fugazi monotheistic masculinism that is Islam. He quotes Mark Twain: "Falsehood grows in the shade of truth." And this is what I hear every time I talk to a Tate enthusiast. They're like, well, look, I'm a Christian, but he's pointing out cool stuff. Islam really is cool, like men travel in packs, which is a very good idea. Men defend their religion. Tate talks extensively about this. They don't take no shit from anybody about their religion. We love this too. Everyone loves it. But it's Fugazi. There's clearly a yearning deep within the Western psyche, Mike Robillard writes, for the return of strong, virtuous, virile, patriarchal leadership. And while flashy, bombastic, and machismo-laden surrogates might satisfy this yearning in the short term, in the long run, they will not suffice. But if Christians, Americans, conservatives want to offer a better alternative, they will have to remember and recognize virtues of true masculinity, including not only strength, but also justice and mercy. That's more like what the heart of our project is here, is saying the truly, masculinist monotheism is Christianity. It's not Islam. You have to be able to cultivate a mindset of unification with Jesus through some suffering. Just as you do on a diet, you do suffer. You suffer when you're, abstaining from sex or something as a married man, maybe during Lent, maybe on Good Friday or something like that. You have to be able to suffer, and to say, no, putting up with any suffering is weak. Well, that's Islamic. That's Andrew Tate. That's Fugazi. What do you say, Elliot?
I don't 100% agree. Thank God he's not Protestant. And that's what I'm thinking right now too, in a way. Like, the whole once saved, always saved, all I got to do is say the magic words and I'm in sort of ease that I think is very attractive to a lot of Westerners who choose that route. Muslims pray 5 times a day. Muslims don't eat pork or drink alcohol. There are a lot of boundaries associated with their faith, and I'm not validating it, but that whole point of ease, I don't think one chooses Islam for ease. It even has I pray 5 times a day. There are elements of like rigor, right? Like they legit take their fasting seriously. We don't. Like Lent, don't we have like St. Michael's Lent coming up? We have like multiple Lents happening throughout the year. Like, we're not doing Lent. When Ramadan comes, as far as I know, I'm not Muslim. I don't hang out. I only see from the outside in, and that's another issue. But they take their austerities seriously. So it's been sort of like, the Protestant revolt had this tenderizing effect, I think, on Western men as well, because it removed all the rigor from Christianity. He beckons, I think, through Islam, beckons that sentiment within masculinity back to, no, faith should be hard. We got to do stuff.
Well, it's probably, it's a good topic. Is Islam really a religion of cultivated sacrificial suffering? I'll always tag that, the other side in that, and say no. And maybe we should do a full sea mask on it. But one thing, Ramadan fasting from dawn to dusk that's not that hard compared to even like a 3-day fast, with only water, or a 7-day fast with only water. I've had a Catholic priest on the show that fasted for 40 days only water and Lent. That's harder than Ramadan. Like we do that, and that's not the Christian average. On average, sure, we concede that Muslims, through some oppositional force, the average is more compliance, I guess, with the faith. But again, if you're allowed crazy concubinage, men can get through a lot, right? And so everything comes down to, with Tate and even Islam, seems hand selected, for the same reasons that the virtues that he cultivates and the virtues he ignores are hand selected. It's an easy thing. I'm like, if you're fit and you're trying to pimp hoes, Like you need to look decent anyway. So a little bit of fasting, sort of, helps you to do what you're trying to do. So everything with Tate is, I guess, a critique that's in parallel for me. It's hand selected to look tough. It's not really as tough as it looks. I guess it's better than your Ned Flanders neighbor who's ruled by his wife, but that's not true Christianity. What do you say, Will?
Yeah, like we said before, the toughest thing would be chastity. That's the hardest appetite to control. And, Islam allows contraception. That's making it a lot easier in many ways for guys to have sex without the responsibility of childbearing, family, etc. So I think you're onto something there. The other thing is that it doesn't have any kind of dogma of original sin either. And that makes a big difference. Islam just says that man suffers from forgetfulness. I think the term is ghafla. And you just have to learn the stuff that you should know, but you've forgotten. You're not fundamentally impaired in will or intellect, and you don't need to suffer. Things aren't as hard for you as in the Christian view of man. And I think it's difficult to overstate the importance of that. It's a religion without any concept of original sin. So Christianity, right from the beginning, tells man, look, you're like a cripple at the bottom of a long flight of stairs. And it's so tough to get to the top that you can't even do it by yourself. And even with the Redeemer, who does want to lead you to the top and unlock the door for you as well, he still wants you to try your absolute hardest and strain to get to the top to purify you. So the vision we're given of what human life is really tough in Christianity.
Number 4, Tate makes Western men weak by denigrating marriage, which is, Will, I'll snake back to you on this. It's where, on average, men are richest and strongest. Not every man could be Andrew Tate, as Pearly Things will point out. And if we're making it like a middle school contest, like who can get in the most trouble, which isn't ultimately good for men. And he's denigrating for the average man, and of course, judging by the Christian strictures of sin and virtue, what is the best life? He's denigrating marriage, and he's saying that's for a kind of undermensch, right? An ubermensch is too good for marriage. It's a kind of a Nietzschean analysis he applies. He's saying it's really bad, and you would only be willing to consent to marriage if you're a kind of deficient man. I think this is the worst of all 7 ways that he weakens the West. Will, you always talk about how the average man is richer by being married. What do you say here?
Yeah, I agree with you. This is the most damaging aspect of it because it attacks the root, which is the family. And you have guys now thinking, okay, I've listened to Tate and other red pill commentators, and I'm thinking, what is a high value man? And marriage doesn't even enter the picture for them. Or if it does, it's maybe at the end of a decade in their 20s of just trying to hit a 6-figure salary and get as much sexual experience as possible. But really what they've done is missed out on a whole decade of the boost to their earnings and their overall seriousness as men that would have come from getting married. So they're left less of the man that they could have been if they just got married earlier and had that family. They've also missed out on all the kids that they could have had in that decade with the woman who's also at peak fertility around that age too. So it works out bad in many ways. And the whole idea that, a man just has to make himself happy, and maybe that's going to involve a lot of fornication. Why is that useful for the matrix? Coming back to Mike's point about strengthening the matrix while pretending to fight against it. There's a guy called Sexton who wrote a book called The Feminized Male, and he presented some really interesting research showing that the sons of dads who abscond, they're not there, not at home, they're far more likely to score higher on indices of femininity. They're also far more likely to be homosexual as well when they reach adulthood. So this is a really subtle way to further undermine men in the West, because If you've got guys impregnating women, leaving the home, sons growing up without guidance, then turns out they're more likely to end up gay, which is a great way to continue the emasculation of men. But it's ironic, isn't it? The alpha is the one who's making his sons gay.
Huh. I've seen that in real life.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the funniest thing. Yeah, I don't even want to tell the story. But what ends up happening here is that the truth plays out through contrast. And so, you know, I think the paradigm that I want to just kind of shoot from right now is like guys like us who are alpha married men. And I think the more that people try the degenerate route and are disenfranchised, and I see it all the time too, right? I mean, everybody sees that. Of course, you have your sinful season, right? St. Augustine, right? But when, you know, they proverbially, if that's what I heard you guys use that word, using big words, when they hit the wall, when the shit hits the fan, and it's ultimately like, all right, this is untenable, it's unsustainable, it's not giving me what I want. From here, what's next? And they have to be able to see guys like you and me with wives like ours making family work. I think in a way, like, you know how Paul says that where, you know, darkness abounds or where sin is abundant, like grace abounds. I think it kind of does the same thing. In a way, it's like the more this illusion is promoted and guys attempt it and are even willing to look in this direction, the more they'll ultimately, that contrast will create, well, disillusion will then force them to look at contrast. But then the light of Catholic marriage and alpha patriarchy and men like us in our marriages starts to really twinkle in their eyes. They really begin to see like, wow, you know what? I'm happy I went, you know, maybe they're happy, maybe they're not, you know, I'm grateful for my sinful years. It gives me contrast. They'll be able to look and say, okay, wow, you know, I tried this, but I really want, and what I think deep inside most men actually really do want, regardless of, you know, being effeminate, being on the surface, chasing, they want a family. Men want a family. You don't, you know, they say your castle, king's home is his castle, man's home is his castle. Like, if there's no family, you're still lacking as a man, no matter how much sex you've had. And so how does, in this day and age, the question will be, and I think it's going to grow in popularity, how do I be a father? How do I become a husband? They're not going to look to Tate. They're not going to, you know, they may have looked to him when they were 20 and they were chasing tail. But once they wake up after that delusion, they're going to say, where's Will? Where's Tim? Where's Elliot? I want what they have. How do I get a wife? How do I bear many babies and have a family? And so that's what I have to say about that.
The question is this: I'm not a sex egalitarian. Maybe very, very famous within Christendom for not being a male-female egalitarian. I don't want to sound like one here, but I will. At what point is it too late for a man to still be a high-value man? The standards aren't self-same with those of women. They have a higher standard of review. You know, you can't just go back in time unless you have a 1985 DeLorean and make yourself a high-value woman again. But this is also true for men, right? Just because they can still spawn, they can still procreate, like Charlie Chaplin, up to 70. That doesn't mean they're still high value. They're no longer strong. They're no longer protective. They can no longer play with their kids. They need naps 40 times a day. And if you take your kids to the mall, you spend the entire time searching for the softest frozen yogurt for your dentures. Right? That's not a high value man, just because technically he can still impregnate a chick. So I'm not an egalitarian. It's a higher standard of review for women that they should marry young and they should marry virginally young, but it's suboptimal for men too to like at 40 or 45 try to be a man. Can we just say that? And that doesn't make me a sex egalitarian. And Tate is teaching men like, I mean, I guess I'm responding to, I mean, I really do love all of the back and forth today, Elliot, but like same as the MGTOW guys and the red pill guys complain about women that want to go have their fun, party hard as an undergrad, and then meet a low T Ned Flanders Christian guy that'll forgive her all of that, which, you know, ex-ante cucked him, you know, with all the guys she slept with in college. Well, you can't go back in time and change that. In a less rigorous way, the same principle applies for men. What do you say about that, Elliot? And then, Will, what do you say about that?
Yeah, well, I do agree. The time frame is a little different, and my hope and desire for men, you know, if I'm wishing for them, is to have what I've had, because being married early has been such a blessing. Hopefully you don't have to spend, hopefully nobody has to spend too much time screwing up. But once again, it's the screw ups that allow you to see how beautiful the right way is. You know, I don't think if I would have ventured so far away from the faith that I would love it as much as I do. It's like that boomerang effect. And you know, it took me 40 years. Luckily, you know, it's a little different. You know, my fertility has, and testosterone levels don't have much to do with what the Lord, my relationship with the Lord may even be better being an older man. But, you know, hopefully it's one of these situations. If they have to sin, it's, hey, by, you know, 25, 27, you shouldn't be, for a guy, in my opinion, I mean, why we shouldn't be later than 30. Of course, girls between, you know, 20, 23, 24. And so if we kept it within those bounds, we wouldn't have to deal with, you know, the decades of decadence that leads you to being a, you know, a 40-year-old or a 60-year-old dad with diapers. And it's even worse today, because I'm looking around. Colleen and I we were out at a restaurant this weekend with our kids, and our kids are all teenagers. We're in our early 40s, and we're sitting next to two tables with like 50-year-olds, or at least they look that way. They're probably our age, but they don't take care of themselves. Just old fat people with babies. I don't know what they were doing. That guy didn't look like he was a pimp or she was a slut, but they were doing something in their youth. And now they're, you know, sucking it up with changing diapers as an elderly person.
Yeah, you can also come into marriage late as a man, having had a couple of decades of degenerate behavior under your belt. And you've got so many bad habits that are going to make you a bad husband and father, because you've established all those patterns of vice in your life. And like Tim said, you can't just go to confession and have them magicked away. It's a real work to uproot them. So in that sense, you're not a high value husband or father either. You're starting off from a far worse position than you could have had if you'd just been virtuous in the first place.
Amen. Now, whereas I think what he's done to popularize not getting married is probably the worst item on the list, item number 4. I'd say the most venial is number 5. He discourages protectiveness and protection of women, which is it is fundamental to who we are as men. But as Michael, Dr. Mike would be pointing out if he were here, this one's the most understandable, because you've got these, you know, feminists. I don't want to use all the buzzwords and get this video a strike, but it's like the AstroTurf feminists, TERF, like they're getting come after, and they can't protect themselves. They're women, right? They're getting come after. Would they look to the men that they, as feminists, they've been hating on and trying to bring lawsuits against and trying to steal their money and the children for the last 50 years? Would they now look to men for protection against these AstroTurfs? It's the most complex answer, and we don't have to get all into it today. I'm just saying that even though I'll give the most ground on point number 5 here, you know, Tate weakening the West by popularizing the diminution of our protectiveness of women. It's still a weakening. even though it's a more understandable one than items 1, 2, 3, 4, or 6 or 7. What do you say, Will? What do you say, Elliot?
So in terms of protecting the girl that you're fornicating with when you're off walking through the streets on a date together and some guy tries to steal her handbag, Tate's all about that kind of protection, the physical protection. But it's actually worse to be fornicating with her in the first place, because to damage her spiritually, morally, is worse than to punch her in the face physically. So you're not protecting her in that sense, in the more important sense. And then if you're also getting women to be occasions of sin online as webcam girls, you're hurting not only them, but the men too. So there's all kinds of ways in which that all important moral and spiritual protection aren't being done. And there's actually plenty of damage being done there. It's not just neutral.
What do you say, Elliot? Well, one bit of pushback, Will, is, I mean, I think one of the things he was in some trouble for, legal or at least cultural, is like essentially a softcore BDSM video where it looked like he was doing real violence to the women. And of course, there's real violence in fornicative, whatever it is, style outside of marriage sex, and you're not protecting them from whatever multiple, I'm sure STDs he's exposing them to himself or others with his webcam biz. So I yes, in the narrow exception is basically to look like Loverboy, to look like a strong man, to continue pimping hoes. He says, because of your rep, it's cool to beat the hell out of a mugger who tries to take your girl's handbag in the moment. But that's not true protection for the good of the other. I'd say even physically, he's not protecting them. I don't think you think that either.
No, but a lot of the guys who aren't him, but who watch him, would have that as an ideal. Like, a man should be physically trained so that he can mess with any other guy who tries to mess with his girl, because that's being the protector. That's what they've got in their minds.
Of course. Which is good. That's good. You can't be the one hitting her or leaving her high and dry also. What do you say, Elliot?
What was the statement that Mike made again?
It wasn't a direct quote. Mike is consistently in off channel, and when we do these C masks, I was just representing Mike's point of view, which I think is reasonable, that like, of all the 7 evils of Tate, to say the fact that he's diminishing Western man's protectiveness of females is the most understandable and maybe the least evil, to the extent that it's asking us to not remember that feminists are biting the hand that feeds them when they turn to us as protection against things like, the opponents of TERFs. Let's say that. I don't want to use the word. So I didn't read a direct quote.
I still don't understand it. Let me see if I understand, or try to understand. So Tate essentially he's promoting the idea of being forgiving towards feminism as a means of protecting women ultimately. Is that?
No, I mean, the critique, item number 5 on our list is that he's lessening the Western man's protectiveness of women, like writ large.
That's a negative. Yeah. So
that's a negative. I'm saying it's less negative because it is genuinely more understandable, which is what I know Michael Robillard's always saying.
Yeah. Protecting, when it really boils down to protecting Western women, it comes back to the story of fatherhood, right? Like, we're not Captain Save-A-Hose. I really and truly am not trying to save feminist, and I'm not trying to save every woman. I have 3 daughters.
Right.
And so, the feminist attack is, of course, as Will said earlier, it's attack on the authority of the father. It's attack on the father's responsibility to protect the honor of his, i.e., virtue of his daughters. And so if Tate is standing, I can get behind it if he was standing behind fatherhood, true patriarchy, family, marriage, and raising daughters to be virtuous, well, then yeah, that's the protective route. But as far as I think you use that word turf, which I think ultimately is like, who is this? The run of the mill blue-haired feminist? Is that what you're talking about when you say turf?
Well, it means they're exclusive of transformers exclusive radical feminists. They're hated by
The extremists.
transformers. Yeah, by transformers.
Yeah.
And they get beaten up sometimes on college campuses these days. Feminists.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're getting bullied around, or at least pushed around, which is
that's good.
It is. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's why it's like, it's kind of good. I think you gave the perfect answer, Elliot, where it's like, okay, don't allow Andrew Tateism to diminish your fatherly protectiveness of your wife and kids, but you don't have to protect all. You don't have to believe all women. You don't have to protect all women. Look, I got 6 daughters, man. I have me and 1 son. Yeah. That's a big charge. I every day got to be strong, got to be vigilant. 6 daughters, 1 wife. That's a big charge. So that's my job. I think your answer is the perfect answer, Elliot. Yeah, protect the daughters. You don't have to protect the turfs. And I think that's Mike's big point. I don't want him to watch this show later, because he's out today, people. He's feeling under the weather, and feel like I'm saying, he's pushing back on point number 5, too hard or too strong. Did you have anything to add, Will?
No, I think that's completely fair. Just like we don't have authority over someone else's wife, your real duty is to your wife and to your daughters. And I think Mike's just saying that there are women that are less appealing to protect now, let's put it like that, than in the past in many cases. And for guys to run around the streets thinking it's their immediate duty to save these women who don't even live anywhere near them is ridiculous.
Which is why it's the discouraging protectiveness of your wife and daughters, because Tate's saying don't even have wife and daughters, is still, it makes our list. It's still a negative thing, but it's not as negative as some people would think if they get carried away with these simpy white knighty notions that Elliot's talking about. Of defending all women or something. Point number 6 is, this is straightforward. I'll let you guys have at it. I won't even say anything. He's popularizing pimpiness in the same way that gangster rap was doing in the 90s. And it's horrible for men and women and society writ large. What do you say, Elliot?
So I receive applications from young men from all walks of life that want to work with me, and they want to better their lives. And I am shocked that I have met a few, not more than half a dozen, that legitimately run webcam businesses. They bought a course. Apparently Tate has a course where he teaches you how to basically be a digital pimp, and you use OnlyFans. And there's a way and a means by which these guys are learning from him how to make money by pimping chicks. And I don't even know where I'm going with this right now. I basically forget the question, but I'm on this rant right now. I'm thinking about like the whole thing is falling apart ultimately anyways, getting faker and faker. Like a lot of these digital pimps are they're pimping digital chicks. Women are losing on this front as well now. Like ultimately, like, and I've seen some, I don't know, I'm not looking for them, but have you guys ever seen like these AI generated girls? They'll just say and do anything that you want, and they look real. Who's gonna pay these these pimps and their OnlyFans chicks when the next level is AI generated hoes? Anyway, I don't know where that came from, but I was thinking about that.
Yep, it's a good point, because there's another way in which you're undermining men, because you're separating them not just from families, but even from real flesh and blood women. If you're getting them fixated, as a lot of people do end up once you start down the porn rabbit hole on the AI stuff. The C.S. Lewis's sci-fi novel, That Hideous Strength, has a vision of the future with the people who live on the dark side of the moon. And he says the womb is barren and the marriage is cold. There, when a man takes a maiden in marriage, they do not lie together. Each has a ghostly image of the other. And it's this simulation of the human being and sex, totally divorced, not only from procreation, but even from the flesh and blood touch of the spouse. And that's the kind of dystopian technological hell that we're heading towards. So anything taking guys closer to that is ultimately bad for them.
Yeah.
Seventh and final on our list of ways that Andrew Tate makes Western men weak is that he occupies valuable limelight, occupies valuable social space, social media space. He's the one getting these interviews on, Candace Owens or Tucker Carlson or Patrick Bet-David. So this, guys out there that are Tate defenders and are critics of Christian masculinism, if they're watching, they're just going to go, yeah, this is just sour grapes from these guys. You're literally enumerating as point number 7. You think that ought to be you, getting interviewed on it. I understand why it's not popular. So it depends how you use the word ought. But would it be better for society if Will Nolan or Elliot Holmes went on any of these shows that Tate did? You bet your ass. Yeah, so I'm not going to shy away from saying it. At the same time that I understand why we have these preconditions that are much, much stronger, much, much higher, much, much better for society. And guess what? This is a matter of fact for people out there who would have used to be called conspiracy theorists. Mainstream media, including to some extent even Daily Wire, will not mainstream someone saying something as Western civilizationally chauvinist as what we're saying. What really will rebuild the West? It's strong men, truly strong Christian men. You're not going to hear that on any of these programs. And I like Tucker, and I know Tucker believes that, but he might not be gatekeeping. He might just be like, well, I didn't interview you guys because you're not the most Googled men on earth. Tate is. I get it. But with a lot of the other even right of center semi-conservatives, he's getting the headlines and it's occupying valuable space, which informs an opportunity cost. I would be stoked if I saw Will Nolan or Elliot Holmes on one of these programs. I'd be like, this is amazing. This is amazing because this is convincing. It's got the ring of truth. It's much harder to do Christian masculinism than pseudo pimp Islamic masculinism, right? It's just not as hard, but you guys can make it look palatable. You can make it look compelling. I could do the same. I really could. I could sell this to even the common dude and be like, I know this is hard. It's harder than just lifting weights every day. It's harder than just like doing sit-ups or whatever. What do you guys say? Will, what do you say about this one? He's occupying valuable space that he doesn't damn well deserve.
He's allowed to because there's so much common ground between him and the Matrix, which is the big point of Mike's article that we started with, because he's not really going to challenge the fundamental points that they accept. Like, is it okay if a guy wants to have sex before he gets married? Yeah, it's fine. What about if he wants to use contraception as well? Yeah, it's fine. Is there really a whole lot more to life than get paid and get laid? Not really. That's kind of the main measure of what makes you alpha or not. And that is music to the ears of the Matrix. It's what it wants people to hear. As soon as you get anyone coming in challenging those big ideas, even like Tate says, he's got no problem with LGBTQ, as long as they're not trying to involve him in it personally. It's fine for it to be out there socially. He's admitted himself being a feminist in many ways, and sex work is real work for women. None of us would say any of that stuff. So we'd be coming in conflict with the mainstream messaging too much. So whenever you've got anybody like this who's appeared quickly and has got so many eyeballs on him, then it's because they want the attention to go there. And that's what you need to be suspicious of. Tate's not shadow banned on Twitter. He's got a massive account. Little old me and guys who say stuff that's similar to me as well, shadow banned. If you try and search me on Twitter now, put my name in, you won't get me coming up, because I say things about sex and the family that are too countercultural. And you know that's where it counts, because that's what the Virgin Mary said at Fatima, that the final battles over marriage and the family. Is someone for the family or against it? And Tate might say he's for it, but really, is he? If you look at how it undermines the root of the family. So I think that's what the real problem is.
Mike concludes his article with words which echo that sentiment. I still can't help but feel that historians will look back on this unique period in human history with amazement. Men were so starved for role models. We're talking about you guys, Patriarchs and retrogrades, that even a pimp and a con artist could attract an entire generation of Western men simply by acknowledging basic facts about human nature. It's kind of like Jordan Peterson. Make your bed. Whoa, he's a prophet. It's not that deep, bro. There are deeper things that need to be said. Perhaps they will also lament that a man who could have led his followers out of the matrix chose instead to lead them further and deeper in. But the point here, Elliot, that I'm making and Will's making, our point number 7, is Tate would not be occupying this space. He would be gatekept if you were actually leading them out of the matrix. He would not be making these major appearances. He would not be allowed to be the number one most Googled man on the planet if you were actually leading men out of the matrix. You know why? Because the matrix runs the matrix. Game recognizes game. Like that's not going to happen. He is being allowed, like a ruse, to appear as some sort of messiah, leading dudes out of the matriarchal, gynocentric matrix. He is not. And by definition, the house always takes. So you could basically take it to the bank. You can't be a conspiracy theorist and be like, well, somehow Tate's beating the house. That doesn't happen. What happens if you do a show on Christian masculinism, the true red pill, the true answer to the matrix? You get about 10,000 views on YouTube, and you get cool dudes in the audience that are like, I love your sea mask stuff. Everything I hear, 10,000 views on YouTube, no help from YouTube, no bit. I mean, what happens if you write a book called Ask Your Husband? The main thing that red pill guys should be hoping women write a book on. Right. You could look up Steph's story, what happened to her. Write a book called The Case for Patriarchy. You get some audience because, the three of us are blessed with some audience, and they're the coolest people out there. Thank you guys very much, Patriarchs, retrogrades. But you're not going to get the massive audience that Tate's getting. What do you say, Elliot?
Well, I keep coming back to this idea of give them what they want and then give them what they need. Tate is like that scoop of ice cream that you got to give your kid for them to take the medicine, or like the peanut butter that you hide the pill in for your dog. I'm not ice cream. You're not ice cream. You guys are not Mickey Mouse. You're not attractive and charismatic the way he is. So in a way, he deserves it. He's a perfect guy for it. I mean, his charisma, his just everything about him, like he is candy to a starving, dopamine addicted society. Like, oh, give me that. But I appreciate that because we're the medicine, and you don't start with the medicine. You start with the candy. And in the same way that, like, I played football and I was a wedge breaker. So that means on kickoff, you got one guy who runs down and he's the battering ram, and he just smashes open the blocker wall so that the guys can come in behind him and clean up the mess. They call those guys cleanup. They come in, they clean up, and they actually make the tackle. We're more of a cleanup, and I appreciate being that cleanup. I don't want to be on TV, quite frankly, right? And I don't think I would be as popular as him given the same stage. But because of his candy, because of his charisma, because of his ice cream, you and I'm telling you, he's making our job easier to deliver the medicine, because now guys are cracked wide open And it causes a bit of confusion as well. You know, there's not, what he's doing is, in a world that's been so cucked, what he's doing isn't creating certainty. He's smashing open. And what happens when something is smashed open, right? When it's smashed open, things are up for grabs. And so what's up for grabs right now? Well, the guys that would listen to us, the guys that are actually looking for us, that otherwise wouldn't be looking for us and be attracted to us and resonating with the things that we're saying, had they not gotten that piece of candy first. And so that's how I see him. And so I'll let him be. And I appreciate him for being who he is and where he's at. But understand, folks, candy rots the teeth. No matter how good it tastes, you got to eat that steak. And so, hey, I don't mind being a steak. It's not everybody can even, not everybody can handle the steak, right? Some people, they're just supposed to be junk food junkies. And so let them be.
Yeah, I always like your positive spin that's not diluted. That's still true, Elliot. All I don't like, and all the point number 7 here points out, is like, it's frustrating to sit and listen to in real time your barber or your grocer or your neighbor, like, do you see Andrew Tate? Like, Tim, you do right-wing stuff. You're an influencer. This guy's like creme de la creme. No, it's not. This guy's the red pill to the matrix. No, it's not. He's a blue pill to the matrix, ultimately. Yes, I do. I love all the other images. He's breaking the conversation back open. He's helping to break up that ice. We have to scoop out the smaller pieces of ice so the ship can move. But it's frustrating to me to listen to guys be like, man, this is just pure truth. They don't want him to say it, but he's saying it anyway. He's breaking up the matrix. That maybe it's just I'm petty. And Will said this earlier. That's one way. It's hard for me to sit there at a dinner table and hear people say things that I know are false. And maybe that's, you know, I should be more long suffering, and it's effeminate of me to do that. I think Will's right, but it's annoying as hell. What do you say, Will?
Coming back to the containment idea that we got lots of angry guys, I think Elliot's right. He is usefully smashing some of those walls. But the truly important walls are still left untouched. Mm-hmm. And those are the ones that we need to take down. And Elliot had a wise warning there about candy rotting your teeth. The other thing that you can do is make you go off healthy food, because it hasn't got that exciting zing to it. You don't even want the steak anymore because you're just obsessed with chocolate. And that's the way in which these guys can be truly controlled. And, you know, Jesus has got a way of putting things very starkly. And we're told that unless we are gathering with him, then we are scattering. And that's it, black and white, ultimately. Are you gathering or are you scattering? Are you with him or are you against him? And if a guy's converted to Islam, then look, he's against him. So that's the bottom line of it. However, all truth belongs to Christ. And I like the way that Elliot said there are some true things here, and they do belong to Catholicism because it means universal. So all truth is ours. So we can recognize that where we see it, even if we can also see the danger too.
Those excellent points. As always, I love doing this with you guys. So I feel like we're covering from all angles, especially when we have Mike, all 4 of us. I feel like we don't miss a trig, or at least a big trig, on these topics we've covered. So in sum, real quick, those 7 ways that Tate weakens Western man. Number 1, he cultivates intemperance. Number 2, he confounds men with a false similitude of male virtue. Number 3, he spreads en masse Western Islam conversion. Number 4, he denigrates marriage. 5, he discourages protectiveness in males of females. 6, he popularizes pimpiness, for lack of a better term. And 7, he occupies valuable space that, you know, should in theory anyways be occupied by people that are giving you the whole truth. I've enjoyed the show today. I hope Parish Orphans of Retrogrades have remember to like and subscribe to this channel, like the video. And if you are a man out there that is single and you legitimately agree with what we're saying here today, and you're looking for a woman, you're not trying to enter a seminary, then you shouldn't be single any longer. You should try to get into the married life, the married vocation. www.return.us, retrvrn.us, is literally the only Catholic matchmaking site out there that I know of. And we were originally just trying to make it small scale, 15 men, 15 women. We were flooded by amazingly eligible young women. And now we're trying to catch up the numbers of young men. So go to return.us today and put all of these principles that CMASC preaches every Friday into practice by becoming a patriarch. Power to fathers. Will and Elliot, in that order, do you guys have any call outs you want to make, or any closing shots?
Just on the return matchmaking, if you're a guy who's willing to commit now and provide for a family and lead it spiritually, you've got a range of options. There aren't many guys who are up for taking on that role, that responsibility. So many women are complaining they can't find men like that. They can find men who want to follow the Tate way of life, but they're looking for that Christian patriarch. So if that's you and that's what you want, then we can match you.
I love it. Yeah. I'm just thinking about the amazing service that you guys are providing. No lie, I'm thinking about maybe my daughters one day. I'll put my daughters where they can find really good men. I mean, I trust what you guys are doing. I know this was your shout out, but since we got on the call, we've been talking about even before this. It's pretty cool to see that the time is right for women who want virtuous men and men who are ready to be virtuous, women who are ready to be virtuous. So I see a trend in the direction that we're praying for, and I think it's inevitable, and it's great to see. So regardless of what's happening in pop culture with the Tate-isms and so forth, there's an undercurrent. It's based on truth, and it begins with family and relationships and true intersexual dynamics oriented towards Christ. And so proud to be here with you guys.
And a shout out to Tate as well. I want to relay some of his advice, guys, that I do like. So I know he says if you're depressed, get to the gym and get in shape first, and then you might find that the depression goes away. He doesn't say pop the pills, and that's true. Lifting weights, getting in shape is more effective for relieving depression, anxiety in men than pills are. So that's one of the things I'd recommend to people. If you're feeling down in the dumps, get yourself in shape, and it will help you coming into marriage as well, even in things like your fertility and your psychological stability.
Yeah, the endorphin dump, as you guys know well, is immediate. So that there's lots, but I mean, once we start enumerating, look, here are the true things he's saying. That's one of the truest. It's tough because there's lots that he says that all three of us, all four of us, if I can speak for Mike, agree with. But yeah, absolutely. Pope Leo XIII says one single drop of poison in the cup, though, is deadly. And that's what we're talking about. We got a few more, but absolutely tons of good truths that are mixed in with the poison. And we're just, as Elliot says, the poison cleanup later, if that image holds.
Yeah, Tate, if you ever watch this, I'd love to come and train with you in the gym. You can warm up to your max, and then I'll warm up with that. And then while you sit and watch, I'll teach you about Aristotle and Aquinas, and then convert you. So the offer's open.
I love it.
Based. God bless you guys. I love you guys. Parish Over the Retrogrades. I hope you've enjoyed this one. Kind of extended show for my standard. Have a wonderful Friday. Do the right thing. Be good patriarchs for your families. And if you're not yet, join return.us. Des Volt. God bless you all.
God bless Tim. Elliot.